Hey guys, my name's Terry and I'm a collectibles dealer. I specialize in high-end collections. I'm a big fan of music, but I'm not an expert. That's why we've got Johnny D.
Hello, this is Arif Martin. You're listening to my friend, Johnny D.
Johnny D, we're back for episode 2 and I've been looking forward to this all week. How are you doing?
Me too, man. I want to just do a million of them. I want to keep going. So many stories we got.
I think the first one went well, but you have so many stories that really for this episode too, what I'm thinking is to kind of prod you into giving us some of these juicy stories that are really going to make the audience blow their minds, because the ones I've heard from you already have blown my mind. So let me start by bringing up the famous New York City residence, the Dakota, which is, and I know that you mentioned to me that you had worked on an album with Roberta Flack, who's legendary. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I actually did two records. But yeah, so the Roberta is a crazy story. Growing up, I was tremendous Roberta Flack fan. And there are people that Aretha fans and Patti LaBelle. Roberta's always been my girl. And when I got to Atlantic Records, one of the first things I did, literally, I'm not credited for it, but it's one of the first things I did. I noticed that every one of her CDs was reissued except the Roberta and Donny Hathaway, which was my favorite album. So I went to this guy who was able to make things happen. His name was Woody Firm, great guy. He passed away a couple of years ago. I said, Woody, how could this not be on CD? He goes, I think it's an over. I guess it doesn't make sense. So we instantly put that out. So that was my first wow. I was able to come up with this idea and actually get a pressing done. So we put the album out. I'm at the company, and at the time I'm doing promotion and A&R. So I was doing everything. So I was making records, promoting records, and I was handling every DJ in the country and a lot of guys overseas. From the gay world to the hip hop world, I was covering it all. One of the few people that could actually do that well. And while I'm doing this, there's a radio station in Washington, D.C. called WPGC. For those that know hip hop in America, the last 20, 30 years, Hot 97 in New York, or Funkmaster Flex, has been the epicenter of this is the hip hop. But before that took off, WPGC in DC was the station. There was a guy named Al BD who was the program director. He was a very progressive guy. He was a white, but he knew about black music and he understood it. And the Fugees had just dropped their album, and Killing Me Softly was never to be a single. That was a throwaway track. That was a joke. That Wyclef, Lauryn Hill loved the record. They just put it on top of the drum. It was a joke throwaway track. There was never a part of Columbia Records that was ever going to promote that record. And they started playing the record in the mix show. And Al BD said, this is so hot, I'm putting it in rotation. At that time, a rotation is when you put a record in on a radio station, you play, 60. If you get 70, 80 spins a week, that's a lot. That's prime time plays. This record was getting probably 60, 70 spins a week. Nobody else was touching the record. As soon as I heard this, I went to Ahmet Erdogan, who was the founder of Atlantic, who I wound up being very, very close with. I said, Ahmet, we have to reissue Killing Me Softly. This other company is going to run with it. We have the original. Let me do dance mixes, the whole thing. So at the time, Roberta was just dropped. And I had heard Roberta was a nightmare and a half to deal with. She just was not fun. But I loved her. And I was like, I'm willing to have the battle. So I go to Ahmet. We have the meeting. And I start pursuing Roberta. So I get Roberta to come to my office. And she comes in. And Roberta would walk in. And she was very... she'd be dressed very casual, whatever, carrying food with her. She looked a little bit crazy. So she used to get mad that people didn't recognize her in the company. But I'm like, Roberta, it's a new day here, whatever. I'm like, these people, they don't know what the hell's going on. Anyway, I talked to her. We get very close. She sees how sincere I am, and then I dropped the bomb. I said, listen, this is happening with this group. She didn't really know who the Fugees were at the time. I said, this is about to happen. We have to be ahead of this. Why don't we do a remix thing? I'll remix Feels Like Making Love, Killing Me Softly. The closer I get to you, we'll pick 5 records, the whole thing. So she's kind of like on the fence with it back and forth. I convinced her to do the single, but I went through absolute hell to do it. She was yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. In the meantime, I was an autograph nut. I always wanted to get things signed. So I said, listen, I'm sending you over all my albums to sign. And she's like, okay, I'll sign them. She goes, but she goes, but I want that thing that you have on the floor. I had a Donny Hathaway plaque. It was because she was the one who brought Donny Hathaway in. It was a Donny Hathaway album was framed. So she said, you have to give me that and I'll do the autographs. I said, I'm not giving you that until you give me it. She goes, what do you mean? I says, you have to give me it. She goes, what do you mean? Because just in case you decide you're going to flake. So she was like, she thought I was crazy, but I waited. She messaged them over and I messaged it over to Donny Hathaway. We wound up getting very close. A couple of years later, we had a #1 record, by the way, in a dance chart with the Roberta Flack. And I had showed you in my apartment, I made a plaque, something on the sheet music world. When a record is a hit by an artist and then another artist comes and makes it another hit, that becomes the newest sheet music situation. So if you go to get sheet music today for Killing Me Softly, it'll say recorded by the Fugees and no longer talks about Roberta Flack. I got the last 5 copies that were on Colony Music and I had all the signatures on it done. The original writers, Gamble and Fox, Ahmed Erdogan, the original producer, Joel Dorn, Roberta, and I had these plaques made, which I had showed you in the thing. But what happened with Roberta after that was I put together a very best of through Rhino, and it was very successful. And when I was doing that, R. Kelly had just come out with an album, and he had done, instead of just doing, disc 1, disc 2, he was trying to make it like a play. So it was like chapter 1, verse 1, all this weird shit. So she called me up and she said, John, I have this idea, why don't we do like what Robert did? I said, I think that's a big mistake. So she's like, I said, listen, Roberta, I'll make a deal with you. Listen to what I did twice. Listen to it one time, 78 minutes. Listen to the disc once, listen to it again. If you don't think what I did was perfect, we'll go your way. She called me back. You're right. It was great. Because I didn't just go looking through our charts. I put it in a way of love for the thing. We wound up having a great success. I think it was a gold album. After that, I helped her with a Beatles album where she had done a Beatles cover, which wasn't through Atlantic. It was through the publishing company. But her apartment, was backed up to Yoko Ono and John Lennon. So she was very tight with Yoko, obviously, and John all those years. And I would walk her back, to the apartment and stuff, which was always used to blow my mind. I was like, John Lennon got killed over there and everything. But when I went to her studio, she had a little office in the city. She had all her stuff, cassettes, reel to reel. She really was one of those few artists that kept her stuff. So I said, I love test pressings and acetates. Do you have any? And I had a couple already. And she said to me, yeah. She goes, well, look in. And I pull out Killing Me Softly. I'm like, Jesus. And she's like, you could have, So she gave me everything I wanted. But the thing that blew my mind was my favorite album that I had reissued at Atlantic. It's Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway. She had a test pressing, and on the jacket, which to me is worth $1 gazillion, Donny and me. Which, how cool is that?
That's pretty crazy.
And then one more quick thing on Roberta. A couple of months, after this happened, somebody put up a Roberta Flack test pressing. They didn't show a label or anything. It just said Roberta Flack test pressing. It was some non-record guy selling it. I get it. I won the bid. It comes to my house. I open it up, and it says, to Nessery, let's listen to this together, Joel. Joel Dorn's the producer. It was her first album, first time ever I saw your face. And Nessery Erdogan was Ahmed Erdogan's brother. He was the founder of Atlantic. So I called her up instantly. I said, you're not going to believe what I have. She goes, oh, you were meant to have that. She was on that spiritual thing. So yeah, I love Roberta. I had a soft spot for her.
That's great that she knew that you were the collector. I mean, that she...
And she said, I told her, I said, you're not going to believe what's in my hand right now. It's like, from Joel to Nessery. You were meant to have that. You need to,
And that's one of the special things about records that's different than other collectibles is like you could find things written on the jacket or on the record that, like you saw with that Russell writing in the corner on that Breaks acetate. There's like hidden gems that make it really personal. it's got a lot of visceral power when it's been in the hands of the people making the records and
Absolutely.
the executives and yeah, I mean, it's you talk to people who are collectors and who are collecting things that are mass produced, where there are just tons of copies of them, and you show them something original that there's only one of, and it makes such a difference. It really makes it personal.
And the fact that they might have touched it and who touched it. And I worked with Luther Vandross years later. I remember I kept a Sharpie. I had him sign all my CDs and I put the Sharpie in an envelope. I was like, well, it's got Luther's DNA on it, which, it's just kind of a, it's on the crazy part of us, like, oh, wow, something like that. I also have a Nancy Sinatra acetate. It's not a hit, but on it, she wrote Dad's favorite, N. Which is
Wow.
really cool. That's Frank
Yeah.
Sinatra's.
That's
That's kind of a sick thing. It's weird.
My passion in music, it comes from hip hop. It's just the music I grew up listening to, growing up in the mid '80s. I mean, it doesn't get better than Run DMC for me. Like that's all the early stuff. And being on the West Coast, I love all the early West Coast rappers, especially. But those, when you were telling me some of the hip hop stories that you've had, I mean, I was dying inside listening to them. I mean, you were telling me a story about you in Miami Beach with Biz Markie. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I was with Biz probably in early 2000s.
How did you meet him? How do you meet someone like that? Was he?
I met Biz back in 1990. Believe it or not, the crazy thing is I met him in the most random place. I was at a record label in Manhattan called Micmac, which was a freestyle record label. And he somehow he knew either the parent or the manager of one of these artists. So I walked in and he was sitting there, and we had mutual friends. I knew Jazzy Jeff, and we just instantly hit it off. And he was one of the nicest people, fun, always smiling, always light, just funny. And the story I was telling you was, obviously growing up, I loved Biz, and I was there hip hop wise, like early on as a DJ. Disco morphed into the hip hop. I mean, people have different things about where hip hop came from, where it stemmed from. It stemmed from disco. When you look back at those early park parties that were going on in the 70s, those were disco breaks that people were up rocking to, which turned into breakdancing, and it turned into sampling, and it all stemmed from disco. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But with Biz, at the end of The Vapors, one of his biggest records, he says, the girls with the underarm odor. So every time I would see him, I would do this horrible beatbox impression, which he thought I was absolutely comical. And then I would go, the girls with the underarm odor. And that used to make him die. But he was also a crazy collector. His house, at one point, he had a house he lived in, and a house next door to him with just collectibles. Toys, records, Atari, like every video game made, records. And he was always
fantastic.
He was always after this one Queen promo 12-inch I had of "We Will Rock You" or "We Are the Champions," and I was about to do a remix album with him where he would take the actual multi tracks and remix them, and we had the Warner Music Group just took over the London catalog, so we had Warner, Elektra, the Sugar Hills, so we had all these things. And when I mentioned that, I just thought it was so crazy that a guy like him, right? So you say, Biz, you have access to thousands and thousands and thousands of masters, basically anything you could think of. What does he come to me and say? I said, "What if I give you one tape?" He goes, "Honky Tonk Woman," and I'm just like, and it's really cool. But who would think that of all the stuff, every break we had, and disco sample, he was like, he wants a Rolling Stones, Honky Tonk, which always kind of blew my mind that was where his brain went. But then later on, I got an acetate of that, when you can't always get what you want in a flip, and then I got a test pressing of it. So I used to let him know, yo, Biz, I got the acetate of Honky Tonk. He was very in the know of collecting, very in the know.
Now, am I mistaken in remembering something about the Just a Friend acetate? Is that something?
I have a Just a Friend acetate, but it's not an American acetate. It's a UK. It's a UK acetate.
Explain
I've
that a
never
little
seen-
bit. Explain that a little bit. What
Oh,
a
with the
UK?
UK?
Why would they make a UK acetate? Is it when they didn't re-record the song, right? It's just
No. So what would happen? Well, there'd be a couple of reasons. One of the reasons would be, obviously, in America, a lot of the time, if we made the acetate here, we were giving it to an American DJ. Sometimes they'd make it and send them overseas, but for the most part, each territory had access to a mastering place where they could do it. Also, in a lot of the UK ones, they were doing alternate versions, so they might have a different edit for because the crazy thing is I had big success in the UK with a bunch of records, and one of the things I love the UK and they're a big part of my life, but the thing that sucked about them was they were very much like, wow, that's the greatest thing ever. We have to mix it. Like they always had to like get involved. I always joked, if you gave them Thriller, they'd say, wow, we love it, but let's remix Billie Jean. Like they were always, I don't know, for whatever, they wanted it to be fresh. I mean, a lot of times America would lead. So I guess if the exports came in, they were afraid the consumer bought it already. Why would they buy the UK thing? So they needed to have something, which kind of makes sense. But yeah, that would be the reason for a UK acetate. There weren't a lot of acetates in different territories. The UK was one. I don't remember German. I don't remember many of those. It's really about America and the UK as far as the acetates.
from a collecting standpoint, I assume that you would prefer to have the U.S. acetate on most records. Then
I always do. I always find that the American is the piece to have. Ironically, as a DJ, the European pressings of records were always better. So you always wanted to have the import copy. They would create them at 45 RPM instead of 33, so it would be a richer sound. So as a DJ, you wanted the European pressings a lot of the time.
On the Rolling Stones' first album, though, that was obviously released in the UK first,
and the Beatles as well. Yes.
And they actually changed the name when it was released in the U.S. And the only reason I know that is because I believe I saw a picture of that record in your collection.
The New England's newest hit makers,
greatest
right?
hit,
Yes.
yeah, newest hit makers.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, and that's so when they change. I don't know if it's that record, but there was at least one Rolling Stones acetate that had several minutes of unreleased music that has never been heard by anyone, maybe by the band, but it's like a 10-minute version, and there's
that's of Miss You. Yeah, I have an acetate. I actually have two of those. One has a label, one is just a blank label with no label, a blank disc, and it was a 10-minute version of Miss You, and I believe the 12-inch that came out was 8 minutes.
That's incredible. So there's 2 minutes of Rolling Stones that no one's ever heard on one of their most famous songs.
Yes, absolutely.
That's special.
I find with the Stones and the Beatles, it's collectible. I've always gone so deep with everybody, all of the big ones. When it came to Beatles and Rolling Stones, they confuse me. Like I literally can say, you could get all the books and references. I don't know which promos came. The Beatles did so many runs of things. There's the swirl label. There's the regular yellow capital label. There's the Apple. I don't know. And I've yet to meet a Beatles lunatic like myself that could say, these are the ones you want. So I've come across, I have acetates of some Beatles stuff, but I see a lot of them. And it's so funny when people say, oh, but isn't the Beatles, the rarest? I'm like, for some reason, they're around. Like Beatles acetates are around, which blows my mind. But I mean, they were the biggest band in the world, so it kind of makes sense. But they're just not as rare as, I do have some rare stuff, but when I look at other things, I mean, the Sugar Hill Gang, I mean, you were, until I met you, I had no idea. They were like, you said there were 10 made. And when you're like, oh, you sure have the red lettering? I never even paid attention that it was red ink.
Yeah, that's really interesting because there were, I guess, 2 different people writing the labels, and there was a copy of that test press on an A&E show called Hip Hop Treasures, and in the footage, they go through Sylvia Robinson's estate, had lent the museum some items, and there's a record with the red writing on it. And I believe Master G recognized the writing as his own in the episode. But you could find that. It's on YouTube. And, I loved trying to figure out how many of them there were. Like I said, there's two colors. One of the writing is black ink and one is red ink. Yes. And I found there are about 5 of each known to exist, including the Sylvia Robinson's estate, which lent it to the museum.
Yes, I have 2. I have the one which is just, I think it just says Rapper's Life. One of them I have has actual notes, which I can't, I was trying to find it again, which I found it and then misplaced it again. But I told you there were notes on it with a phone number. I think it's a 609, which was, it might be Joey Robinson's house, because 609 was a Jersey area code.
We got to call that number. We got to call that
number.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure. We'll see if Sylvia will pick up. But there was, there's a couple little notes on that. I also, I have a Super Rhymes acetate, which is crazy because it's a 12-inch acetate.
Crazy.
But it's only the 3-minute version. It's a radio edit. There's no such thing as a radio edit.
That's 79 Grandmaster Flash. 79, I think, yeah.
No, Jimmy Spicer.
Jimmy Spicer, you're right. Super Rappin' is what I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, Super Rap was Grandmaster Flash, yes. Yeah. That was 1980. But no, Super Rhymes was, but that was also part of the Joey Robinson thing. That label Daz was also their label. But the Super Rhymes is a 12-inch, but it's only the 3-minute edit. But they didn't there's no such thing as a 7-inch of that. Huh. That's a 7-inch acetate on a 12-inch disc. And it's got a number in it, which is great.
That is crazy. Yeah, I love hearing those stories, especially of, any writing or anything that's on there that makes something really unique and tells a story.
Absolutely.
What the other story that I really that struck me was, obviously Madonna is a big artist for you. I mean, one of the most collected artists in the world. I mean, if you really had to name, the biggest artists, especially of the 80s, I think you would say Madonna, Prince, and Michael Jackson. Those are the names that kind of stand out to me. But Madonna, of course, I mean, her fans and her collector base, they're rabid. That stuff is, incredibly special. And tell me a little bit about your experience collecting Madonna stuff.
Yeah, I've been arguably definitely one of the biggest Madonna collectors since inception. And as I get older, the more people I speak to that are in the know, I find out that she is, in essence, the number one most collected. She's got, her fan base is so big. There are people who just collect print ads, people who just collect her CDs where she's like on those promo samplers. Like, there are tiers of collectors with Madonna. There's no artists that have that. She's, from the gay, straight, black, white, she's knocked down every possible barrier. The girls that wanted to be here when they were young, guys, like and coming from the club world, so she had that street presence. Then her being affiliated with Basquiat and, Keith Haring and, all of those things. Like, she's got so many links, and the New York culture, graffiti, the video of, she's got so many links that, you could love her or hate her, but you can't deny how deep she goes. So I collected her records, and then, as I went on, I was very blessed to come across some ridiculous test pressings, acetates, picture discs, she's just an unbelievable amount of stuff with Madonna.
Well, I know I had a flyer from the New York City Funhouse in 1983. Yes. And, I love this flyer because it was a party hosted by Jelly Bean Benitez for his birthday.
At the Funhouse.
Curtis Blow.
Yes.
And the reason I loved it is because it's maybe the third live show of Run DMC ever, right?
Yes.
And so to me, it says, and introducing, you know, they had one song at the time,
Unbelievable.
But Madonna is playing on the bill that
Yes.
night, and
That's great.
the guy who contacted me about that is contacting me about it for Madonna, and like
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, that's the nothing against Madonna, and I know that she's so collected
Yes.
and everything, but I loved it for the hip hop stuff.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
this guy couldn't care less about that. He just wanted them. It said, you know, performing physical attraction,
Yes.
which I believe you told me was supposed to be her first single.
Yes, Physical Attraction was slated to be the first single, and that was produced by Reggie Lucas, who had just come off of major success with M2 Man, produced Stephanie Mills and Phyllis Hyman, Roberta Flack back together again with Donny Hathaway. And they switched it up to Everybody, which was produced by Mark Kamens, who, you know, there are a lot of stories about who found her and who did it. Mark Kamens was involved, Jelly Bean was involved. Bobby Shaw, a very good friend of mine, was the guy who actually brought her to Seymour Stein, who I believe the rumor is that he signed her on his death, like he's not his deathbed, but he was
In the
about
hospital.
heart surgery.
Yeah.
And Bobby Shaw was a veteran, worked at Warner Brothers, worked at RFC with Ray Caviano, who we'll definitely discuss at some point in depth. And then went to work for MCA for years. He's still in the music business.
Wow.
And he had blessed me with the Acetate of Physical Attraction, which is
Wow.
it is her first record. So as much as I say the album Test Pressing, which there's only one of, is incredibly rare, and the Like a Virgin Acetate album, which gives me a chill, you kind of got to put that Physical Attraction up there.
Those are pieces in your collection
Those
that
are
you
pieces,
just
yes.
wait. So hold on. So quickly, I mean, if you care to share, give us some of the top pieces in your Madonna collection again.
So I have Madonna's first album, Test Pressing.
Self-titled album,
handwritten,
right?
Self-titled album. I have Acetate.
Wait, test pressing of that. So how many of those do you think there are out there?
I believe there's one copy of that.
So you have the only test pressing for
Only
Madonna's
test
first
pressing of
album.
that. Yes. Then I have the only acetate I've ever seen of Like a Virgin.
The
album.
only acetate of Like a Virgin.
And that in its pristine condition. The crazy thing about Madonna is she mastered all over the place. So she's got stuff at True Tone here, there, whatever, which I kind of love. That's kind of cool. She's kind of all over the place. So she's but you know what? I'm just, as I'm telling you this, I'm just thinking something really weird. I'm just realizing that the label of the acetate of Like a Virgin, which now it makes sense. How crazy is this? That was Nile Rogers, and Nile Rogers produced Duran Duran. I have a Duran Duran. It was like they redid the acetate labels of that same label. So I guess that was how that worked out. Nile was the producer. He had that mastered where he was doing his mastering. Because when he mastered the Duran Duran years later, it was that same thing, which I'm just, as I'm talking to you,
Oh,
it's
that's
just,
incredible.
but I also have a really, really rare Like a Virgin test pressing album on HRM. HRM really didn't deal with a lot of major labels, but the Like a Virgin album, they did the regular press, then they did a promo only white vinyl pressing of it. And because Specialty, which was the place that all the stuff at Warner got pressed, didn't do colored vinyl, they had to go on the outside to HRM. And I have a black vinyl test pressing on HRM of it, which I believe, I don't know, it's only that makes sense that they went there to press that as a reference and then did the white run,
Unbelievable.
which is crazy. I also have True Blue album acetate, the You Can Dance album acetate. The True Blue is cool because there's disc A and then there's two disc B's. So there's one A side, two B sides. I think there's a sequence or a timing difference with those acetates.
It's so strange because what little I've learned about you personally in the time I've known you is, compared to Madonna, like there's a lot of overlap in the circles, like you mentioned, you know, Basquiat and like the graffiti, and that's something that's, and obviously you're from Brooklyn. She was on the Lower East Side. Like,
Yes.
there's a lot of crossover there. You know,
Yeah, she had that, when she came up, she was, a white artist that I guess people thought she was kind of Latin. She instantly had the respect of an area that would have been hard to get, like a regular white artist coming out. I mean, she happened to have the most incredible producers behind her, but there were so many other, like a perfect example. If you look at, there's an artist called Regina, Baby Love, which was a pop record, which was a big record, produced by Stephen Bray. It was actually meant for Madonna when she passed on it, and then this girl Regina did it. But if you listen to it, it sounds like Madonna. It was a big pop record, but it was played in the pop places. That particular artist wasn't accepted in that world. Madonna was. So that's a perfect, side by side, you could say. Basically the same record, and Madonna is traveling in this world, and this girl would be like, who's this white chick? Like, why is she here right now? That kind of a thing. So she was, I think she, Madonna, just her history is just so rich. She's a little bit, out of her mind these days, but her history is undeniable.
You mentioned, I'm jumping around a little bit, but you mentioned Nile Rogers, and how influential was he?
Nile Rogers, I mean, I think that when people talk about disco, obviously he gets his props and stuff, but I think he's probably one of the most underrated people in pop music culture. This guy, he and Bernard Edwards, what they did, how they took their sound, and then, the Madonna, Diana Ross, David Bowie, Duran Duran. Like, when you look at how they took that and they spread that, and they didn't just spread it, eh, they, Let's Dance, I think it's arguably David Bowie's biggest record. Like, it's insane how, I remember when Miss You came out, somebody had asked Mick or something about, oh yeah, doing disco records now. And that was so big. And they were kind of like, there was backlash of like, you're a rock and roll group and your biggest record's a disco record. There was like a lot of weird stuff. But Nile Rodgers, unbelievably, he's underrated. At the end of the day, he's undervalued, underrated. I mean, just a couple of years ago, he came back with Daft Punk and Pharrell and did that record. I mean, he's an incredible talent. One
Yeah.
of the most important people in, you look at George Martin, and yeah, he's up there. He's up at that level with those Quincy Jones. He's at that tier, hands
Wow.
down, hands
Wow.
down.
Wow. You mentioned Quincy Jones. Have you been able to capture Quincy in any part of your collection?
Yeah, I have some crazy. I actually looking at it right now. I have a Quincy Jones platinum album of the dude. It's my favorite album of all. I always say it's my favorite album of all time. That's on the wall. And a funny story about that was I was, getting in the music business, you want to have gold records. So I was like, getting my first gold records. It was like, wow. And then all of a sudden I have a bunch of gold records. So I went to my apartment where I lived with my parents. We didn't have a lot of wall space. So I went to my grandmother one day. I said, Grandma, I'm gonna put a whole bunch of stuff up in the dining room. So one day I went up there, I put all my gold records on. She'd have all her friends over the house. She'd, oh, that's Jewel, and that's it. It was the most hysterical thing ever. Anyway, always loved the gold record thing. And years ago, Colony Records, the same place I got the sheet music for Roberta, and they were a big memorabilia record place, but they were the place that would crack you. You'd go in there and you ever see manufacturers list the price is $23, but everybody sold the CDs for $16. They sold them for 23. They were like that place. They were the biggest ripoffs in the world. So one day I walk in there and they have all these gold records on the wall. Crazy money, Clive Davis, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, $3,000. Barbara Streisand made out to Columbia Records, 4,000. Crazy, crazy shit. So I look up. There's a Quincy Jones made to A&M Records. So I said to myself, I would take it no matter what. But if I had preference, I'd want it either to Quincy or to the label. Because this way, there's no who's that person? Why is that person on your wall? So I'm like, you know what? And it's eating me. I'm like, how did I got to buy that. I mean, when am I ever going to see that again? Go back the next week. This is a true story. I swear on my mother. Walk in the place. They're all gone. Every record's gone. I said, what the fuck? I asked the guy behind the counter. The guys don't want to talk about it. I find out the RIAA, somehow, I don't know what happened. They did some kind of a raid and they said he wasn't allowed to sell these, which is bullshit. They took them all down, right? So now I'm like, I was this close. It wasn't even a lot of money. They were all going for thousands. For some reason, black music ones was substantially less, which is it's racist. But I was like, it's better for me because I love black music. But it was just so crazy. Like a Blood, Sweat, and Tears is $3,000, and then like a Michael Jackson for like 700. It didn't even make sense. So I'm flipping out. I'm like, I can't believe. And it's like, and I'm that guy that it's just eating me. I'm like, you could have given me 20 other ones. That's the one that's going to make me lose sleep at night. True story. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say when you said that the black musicians were they were cheaper than the other memorabilia, and I found the exact same thing in hip hop memorabilia, even more so than other genres that do have black.
Yeah, you could. Eminem and Beastie Boys are far more expensive than Run DMC.
Absolutely,
Makes no sense. Makes no sense.
Absolutely.
Makes no sense. Yes.
There's a dramatic underappreciation of hip hop, the roots of it. Those early classic groups, and I think it's going to change. I think it's a huge opportunity for collectors who are buying something that they love, and I think in the future they're not going to be able to afford it. It's going to really appreciate in price. So it's good for those of us now who want it and we love it to get it in our collections. But I don't think that opportunity is always going to present itself. So
I feel that way.
Yeah.
So what happened was months go by. I'm going through a billboard in my office one day, and I see this guy in Massachusetts. I sell RIA certified gold records. So I said, I'm going to give it a shot. Call the guy up. Guy picks up the phone. I said, hi, yeah, I'm looking. He goes, yeah, what are you looking for? I says, I'm looking for Quincy Jones, a dude. I have it. I said, what? Because I have it. So I was trying to like pry and see if he would give me any information about the colony, because there could be a lot of these things floating around. So I'm like, are you sure? He goes, yes. Who's it made out to? A&M Records. I said, gave me the price, had it FedEx probably 3 days later. It's on my wall. It was the same one. I don't know. It was the most.
He won't tell you how he got it?
I didn't want to pry because he seemed a little bit. But I was like, listen, if I'm going to get this thing. But the fact that I was like, how do I? Yes, A&M.
He thought you were going to rate him.
But that's what I'm saying. Very. I said, listen. I was very street with myself. Listen, guy, I'm a collector. I really want this. I just missed it. I saw it the other day, and I got it. So that's on my wall, which is. And I have another Quincy Jones. I have Quincy Jones autographed books and stuff. Yeah, Quincy. That's one of the. Oh, I have an acetate of his first hit, which is "It's My Party." Leslie Gore. 78 RPM acetate, which is. I don't even know like I explained that. That's so bizarre that was on an acetate like that. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
It's amazing, that story about how that piece ended up in your collection, after you came so close to it. And that's really the heart of what collecting is all about, the journey of trying to find these things.
Journey.
And when it's personal, it means so much when you finally found it. But you got to appreciate the journey too.
Yes.
Because, having all these things is amazing. But I think I think that's missing today. I think these kids today, they go on their phone, anything they want's right there. Right. We had to go through absolute. I told you the other day, when I went to San Francisco, I learned San Francisco going through record shops. I got the Yellow Pages at my sister's house, who was living over there at the marina. I walked from the water to Sanchez. I had no idea what I was doing. And I stopped. I probably hit 25 record shops. That's how I learned and was piecing things together, and it was all about the dig. They call it digging. It was all about the dig and stuff, and it was exciting. Don't get me wrong. As I get older, I have no patience. I love just pressing a button. I want to buy it now. That's the best thing in the world. But it takes away a lot when you look at what you and I have built and the journey of what we had to go through. That really, if you take that away, that's a big missing piece. Yeah, it's the accomplishment of having put it together and what it went through, and the luck. Sometimes just the sheer luck that a piece ends up in your collection.
I attribute a lot of it to luck, 1,000,000%.
Yeah,
yes.
It is special. Any other stories you really want to share with us about stories about? I mean, I know you mentioned Jazzy Jeff, who,
Yeah,
Classic, amazing DJ.
Jazzy Jeff, yeah, a great guy. We met years ago, and we were we would hang out a lot, and he was now on a technical side, Jeff is one of the best, one of the most incredibly technical DJ. A lot of hip hop guys, big name guys, are not good. There are a lot of them just aren't as DJs. Jeff was one of those guys that was exceptionally incredible. And we met, I would go over his house and stuff. And I remember, I think the story I was telling you, which was kind of funny, was um, I could be very annoying, but in a funny way, and just always repeating different things like I would do with Biz. And with Jeff, one of his records, where it says, "Yo, Jeff, rock the beat. Yo, Jeff, rock the beat." And it's like him cutting up Will Smith saying rock the beat. And we were just out one day, and I just kept going, "Yo, Jeff, rock." And I just go right next to him, just keep doing it. And he looked at me, he goes, he used to call me JD. He goes, "JD, it's like you have hip hop Tourette's," which is the stuff. Actually, that could be coined. But yeah, Jeff is a great guy, very talented, and he's one of those guys that, it's funny because when you always look at people's record collections, as a record collector, it's like you think, oh, this guy's gonna have this, that. And I remember the first time I went to a gig, he was doing a gig at Theater of Living Arts in Philly on South Street, and I think he was opening for the Roots, or I forgot what it was. And I'm on stage, and he had his records. Records were destroyed. Like, just looking at them, like, I mean, they put on Summer Madness. It was like, like it was like 30 seconds. But for him, that's kind of cool to have that noise in the record. Like there's that, wow, that's the copy. And then he and Will Smith later on did Summer Madness. So there's that kind of coolness about that. But I remember, like, with records, I think one of the other things that I've learned with record collecting is a lot of the people that you would think have stuff don't have stuff. It's the people who you really wouldn't expect that they open up their closet and you're like, oh shit, that's what
there definitely is a collecting gene. And even if you have access to something that's really cool, but you don't have that gene, you could just bypass it, especially if it's production art and used as a goal to make something else, and you don't have the desire to collect it, you'll just leave it there. A lot of that happened in comic art or other collectibles that are production art. And I feel like these acetates and test presses are production art. I mean, they weren't made for any collector. They were made to make the record.
Yeah,
they were
it
made
was
for
purely a reference. Yes, it was
Yeah.
purely a reference thing. As far as I wanted to ask you about the comic situation, how did you get into the comic side of it? Was that a childhood thing?
You know, in a weird way, it was. My dad, he had this Army Navy surplus store on Market Street in San Francisco, and my grandfather started it, and my dad worked there from when he was a young kid, and me and my brothers worked there from we were young kids too, as salesmen, and people would bring in stuff to barter with him all the time. Sometimes it was records, sometimes it was comics, and this one time he got this incredible comic book collection, and he brought it home, but. My dad was the kind of guy where, like, instead of dividing the comic books up between all three of us, like, he would pick one of the three of us to give the comics to. And I really wanted the comics, but he gave them to my little brother.
Oh, man.
And that killed me. I, like, swore off comics. I wanted nothing to do with comics. But then much later in life, when I was a late teenager, I got very interested in them again because I read a couple storylines. I got hooked on a couple storylines of writers that were just amazing, and the art was interesting to me. I didn't know a lot about the art, but I know that the stories were really engrossing. One in particular one storyline that I loved. But when I was in college, I was traveling with a friend of mine, and we were on a Eurail going around Europe, during the summer, staying in hostels, and we were in Vienna, Austria, at the train station, heading to the hostel, and there was a guy selling all his belongings. They were on like a blanket in the train station,
Yeah.
and the truth is, I bought a stack of comic books for like $5. But my friend tells it a different way, that he found them. But we split them, but I found them. But and we're reading through these comics, and it's raining out, and I don't know how they survived, but we put them in our backpacks for the rest of the trip, and then we get them back, and we're in New York City, and it turns out he sends me a message one day. Look, it was like, look up the price of this, go down to the store and look up the price of this comic book in a magazine, and like a price guide. And I went down there and looked it up, and it was like $16,000 this comic book. And I'm in college, right? Like that's a lot of money,
Yeah. You had one of them, or you had a couple?
So we had a stack, but there was one in particular that was a really rare comic book. It was showcase number 4, the first appearance of the Flash in the Silver Age, really the beginning of the Silver Age of comics. But the thing was, ours was in such good condition, and I don't know how. I mean, I don't know. It was raining, and we're backpacking. It's in a back. Yeah. He must have known. He had some experience with comics. He was a big comic fan, and he preserved it. And we sent ours into one of these grading companies to get graded, and I wouldn't have known anything about that, but he knew about it, and we got it graded. And it came back. It's the highest condition one like that was ever graded, and.
At that point, was it worth more than $16,000 at your?
We ended up selling it through a broker in Manhattan. I believe it was Metropolis Collectibles, and we got 6-figure number for it. Which
incredible.
When you're young, like that's all the money in the world.
That's
like
incredible.
Yeah, and of course, it's a shame that it's like this. But when you find
how much
something
is that worth now?
Oh, probably a lot. Those comic books have just, really high grade key comics. That's like a never ending ascent in price. I mean, if you really got the best graded something of a really desirable key, that's a pretty good investment, I think, in the long term. But it's a shame. But when you discover something that's has some value, you just get totally invested in, I want to find more. And you start going to every flea market and every like used bookstore, rare bookstore. And like you're going to garage sales and estate sales. And I was hooked. Like that's what I wanted to do. And
also, I mean, for you to hit that lotto so early, it's very easy for you. I mean, the average person, I always say this about people that want to become a singer. I said, the reason I would talk people out of it is 2 reasons. If we have a hit, all you want to do is have another hit. If you don't have a hit, all you want to do is have a hit. You can never quench that thirst. You had the instant success. So it's not like you could say, wow, maybe down the road I'll get, like, you got lucky already. So you know more than anybody. There's a very strong possibility you can hit again.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to kiss a lot of frogs. I mean, I live next door to this flea market in New York City, the 25th Street Flea Market.
I know it well.
I probably went to I was there this past weekend working my buddy's booth there, which is so much fun to sit out there and just talk to people. And, you don't care if you do any business at all. You're just having a good time. But some amazing stuff comes through that flea market still today, even with the internet, because, just amazing stuff and amazing people. I mean, some of the biggest rare book dealers come through there, like really interesting people. But
I used to go to the one that was on 24th. So I used to go to the studio. It was on Bayset Studio. It was on 23rd off of 6th. If you went the next block, but 6th Avenue on the right-hand side between 24th and 20.
No, we're talking about the same one. That's 6th Avenue and 25th
there.
Street.
That's
it's in
there.
That parking lot.
Okay, that parking lot. So I used to go there. As a matter of fact, the guy that I got the Gamble and Huff Acetates from, he was a good friend of mine. He's still a record. He's a coin. He's into toys. He's got to call me up and said, I got Philadelphia International. And we had the conversation at that flea market.
No way. Yeah.
Like it's 1996.
There are some characters hanging out there. And before eBay, that was really the place. You could get, I wish I was around during those days,
incredible.
I mean, I didn't get to New York until I got there around 94, 95. But, I mean, the stuff that went through that flea market, I mean, because when I was there, I was on this list, but there are some dealers who are you can get on the New York City public dealers list, and when someone dies in Manhattan and they don't have any relatives,
yes.
they auction off the contents of their homes. And you go into the home for 15 minutes and make your bid in a closed auction.
Yes.
And a lot of those guys had booths at the flea market, so that's where they would sell all that stuff. And some of the stuff, it was incredible from a collector's standpoint. They would come through
great.
there.
And I think more times than not, it's that weird, crazy guy in the corner that looks like he hasn't showered in 6 months. That you get to his apartment and he opens up that drawer that's got, that's the guy. And I've seen and learned that for a long time, that it's those eclectic, those situations. That's a real thing.
Well,
that happens.
You mentioned comics and original comic art. So there's every page of a comic book, there's an original drawing for. At least there was up until a point when they started doing it digital. But, those original pages, there's a really strong niche of collectors who collect that stuff. And I spent a lot of time I worked at an auction house specializing in comics and comic art, and I was a private dealer of this original art for a long time. And you're describing to a T these guys who you would think they were maybe homeless, or like, they don't smell great. They're like, they wear the same pair of shorts, a couple weeks in a row. But, then you go over to their place and their house isn't anything special, but, they could have $10 to $15 million of original. No, it's on their walls. Closet. It's on their walls. Like it's on their walls. And when they want to raise some money because they need it for some reason, people are buying it right off the walls. It's like it's incredible. I mean, but you're right on it. If you've got that collecting gene, money comes and goes, but the art is forever, or the collectibles are forever.
And my father, he passed it on to me. It's like, it's funny. My kids can give a shit. It's like they come at my house. I'm like, guys, people would like pay to come into my apartment. They're like, oh, like they roll their eyes. I'm like, they have no idea.
Yeah, people don't know, but I mean, I've had the pleasure of seeing your place, it is mind-blowing. And I mean, I don't know how you live there, because I would be just worried that someone, that the pizza delivery guy would see it or something, or like, I mean, it's...
I really don't let anybody in, but it is crazy. But the thing is, my father was the collector. He collected guns and cameras and Mont Blanc pens and knives, and he always kept his stuff great. And like, he had stuff from when he was a kid. So I was brought up to really take care of my stuff, and I kept and try to keep things in good condition. And I mean, I have a big sneaker collection. My sneakers are like brand new. I wear them all the time, but they look brand new. So I kind of just but the collector, we're a different breed of people. Absolutely.
Well, I look forward to continuing this on further episodes, and
me too.
and roping in some other collectors who share that passion of us, and exploring more of your stories about music. And I think we've got a lot to talk about, and I'm really excited about it.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks again, Johnny.
Thank
this has
you.
Been great.
And we'll see each other next week.
Okay. Sounds good, man.
Same bat channel.
Have a good one.
You too. Take care.
Bye.